Hi, I'm Vivek Reddy from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and I'm the director of the electrophysiology section. The VCAS trial is a trial looking at ventricular tachycardia, specifically scar-related ventricular tachycardia. And I think it's important because, there's been a lot of activity in terms of the development of catheter ablation tools for atrial fibrillation, but really not much activity at all for developing tools for ventricular tachycardia. So this is one of the very few studies and really technologies that's been designed specifically to deal with ventricular tachycardia, a condition that really we need a lot of help with. We need better technology to improve our outcomes in treating scar VT ablation. The FieldForce Ablation System was the technology that was used in the VCAS trial. This particular catheter uses pulse field energy, but interestingly, with very high voltage. It's over 10 kV of voltage. So the energy is delivered from a standard-looking deflectable catheter. So it's an 8.5 French sheath, fits through an 8.5 French sheath. The tip is a small tip that's used to deliver the energy. And the energy is delivered in packets of around 200 milliseconds. It's synchronized with the QRS or 5 successive heartbeats. So that would be one lesion. Um, and it is a saline irrigated catheter, but only a slow irrigation, about 6 cc's per minute. And does have force sensing capabilities, so you know when you're touching in contact with tissue. Now, the VCAS trial is really a first-in-human study. It is conducted at 2 centers in the Czech Republic, and ultimately a total of 20 patients were enrolled in this single-arm trial. These are all patients who had scar-related ventricular tachycardia, largely post-MI patients, so patients that have had a myocardial infarction in the past. So the trial was designed so that patients who had a recent ICD shock or tachycardia event um, well, they underwent ablation. In patients who didn't have previous cardiac surgery, we also did not just endocardial mapping and ablation, but also epicardial mapping. And what we found were a couple of things. First, um, there were a total of the full cohort, we enrolled a total of 20 patients, and of those 20 patients, 8 patients had both endocardial and epicardial access. And what we did was that we mapped the epicardium, then we did endocardial ablation, and then we remapped the epicardium to see how good these lesions were. Could they actually affect and cause transmural necrosis, which, by the way, is something that we have not been able to achieve with any other catheter technology. And lo and behold, that is what we saw. So in 7 of the 8 patients, when we did ablation endocardially on the inside, we were able to get transmural necrosis so that the potentials that were observed on the outside surface of the part all disappeared, and we didn't do epicardial ablation. In there was one patient that actually had really a diminutive endocardial scar and a big epicardial scar. And we decided in that case that we didn't want to ablate too much normal tissue, and so we did mostly epicardial ablation itself. Um, ultimately, we treated these 20 patients, and the 6-month freedom from VTRVF was around 80%, which I thought was actually quite good. Um, the other important point is on the safety side. There was one patient who unfortunately had cardiogenic shock and passed away after the ablation procedure, but that was a patient who came in with significant heart failure. It came in with a VC storm, and in fact, decompensated even before any ablation lesions were placed. Um, Beyond that, there were no other therapy-related complications. There were no device-related complications specifically. Um, and then finally, just in terms of workflow, it was also useful that this was a very efficient ablation. The mean time from ablation to the beginning of the first lesion to the end of the last lesion was just over half an hour. So we anticipate that this will be able to be a very efficient catheter. So I guess putting this together, what we saw in this first in human feasibility study was that yes, you can make transmural ablation lesions with this technology, and that seems to translate to good outcomes. Obviously, we need to treat more patients to really understand the full potential here.